Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this prayerful pause with the pastor. Maybe it's because I grew up in a family of educators. I don't know. But I grew up knowing about the bell shaped curve. This thing. If you take a group of human beings, any human beings group that you could have, a group of teachers, a group of ministers, a group of students in any class, and the sample is large enough, you will find that most people fall into this bell-shaped curve. And what that means is that the large point of the bell, that middle section, is where you have most of the people, right? It's 34.1% to the left of the mean and 34.1. So you've got 68% of any group is going to be there. It's average. It's in the middle of the curve. And yet, if you talk with most people, they will say to you, well, I'm not stupid or I'm not average. We all think that we are above average. We all think that we are over at the far right, 0.1% or 2.1% or even a 13.6%. And many of us are used to how the bell-shaped curve corresponds to grades, right? The far right, those are going to be your brilliant 4.0 students, A plus students. Then you have your A students, and then the next section, the 13.6, those are your B students. And then that large section of 68% of the people, that's going to be your C students. And then the next little blue part of 13.6, that's your D students, and then your Fs, and so on. And the reason that I bring this up is because I can't get over how many people think that they are so smart when they're just so, as my mother would say, dumb, dumb, dumb. Even if they have book smarts, they're just not street smarts, or they don't have common sense. The CS level is pretty low, as we used to say in high school and college. I think about, I remember my dad explaining this to us in Foundations of Ed. And, he would say, so you put together a bunch of school principals. Yeah, they're all principals. They're all, kind of smart. They're in charge of the building or whatever, but most of them are going to be C's. They're in the middle. They're in the bell. Every once in a while, you'll have somebody who's great. Or school superintendents. Oh, that used to really get them. The superintendents who would think that they're just so brilliant because they're the superintendents. But, by the law of averages, most superintendents are a C. Or medical students. Okay, so maybe it's hard to get into medical school, so you're above average to get into medical school, but once you're in there and you're on your way to becoming a doctor, or you have been graduated and you have passed the boards and you are a doctor, a practicing physician, compared with other physicians, most people are going to be average. Yet we all think that we are above average. Garrison Keillor used to talk about that, right? In Lake Wobegon, where all of our children are above average. It's hard for me to stop and think of myself as average, but I am about some things, and about some things I'm below average. When it comes to knowledge of how to fix my car, I'm below average. For somebody who fixes their car, though, for them to think about having the skills to be a pastor or a spiritual guide or a shepherd, they'd be below average, and I'd probably be up in the A and B area. We're not stuck in that average place, but I think that we are there more often than we're not. And it behooves us to remember that, because it keeps us humble, and it keeps us looking at who might know more about this than I do, rather than thinking, oh, I know that, or, oh, I'm smart, I figured that out. Here's a case in point. My daughter is above average. She tests out way above average when it comes to academic IQ tests. Way above. And yet, like most people in their 20s, she hasn't had much experience with car loans. Can you tell? We just went through this. And so it was really, really important for her to sit down with a financial counselor at the credit union to explain how all that works. Not because she can't figure it out, but she just had not had experience with it, right? And in the process, she found out that some of her basic understandings about options that she might have for other avenues of her finances are enhanced. They were greater than she knew they could be. So for a student who is way above average on that bell-shaped curve in some areas, she was average when it comes to that understanding of finances. How do I know what that feels like? Because I was that person. I was off the charts in some areas, but when it came to finances and stuff, most of us in our early 20s were there. We're either at or below average. And at first, she was just as reluctant as I was at her age to sit down and want to learn anything from someone else because, well, I'm smart. I know how to do that. I figured this out. But there are areas that we don't know that we don't know. You know what I mean? When I think about myself and my spirituality, the growth of my relationship with God, I have to remember that there are people who know more about it than I do. And I have to be willing to say, okay, so maybe I'm average. I have this image of myself of being above average. Maybe I'm not. Maybe there are some parts of spirituality where I'm below average. Frankly, yes. When it comes to Benedictine rule and some of those disciplines and practices that tend to be more rooted in our Catholic history, I am way below average. So what we have to do, I think, is to remember that we're not static in a bell-shaped curve. There are some areas where we're going to be way high and some areas where we're probably going to be below average. And for a bunch of them, we're going to be right in the middle, average. But get off our high horses in thinking that because we're above average in one thing, we're going to be above average in others. Or conversely, because we're below average, that means we can't know anything or be any good at anything else. Just not true. We need to be constantly figuring out where we are on the bell-shaped curve, depending on the topic, the area, whatever it is that we are dealing with. And I extend that especially to our spirituality as we are entering the final month of summer, for some of us, some vacation time. Looking at this month of August that's ahead of us, what do we want to do and what do we want to focus on and who can we turn to? Who knows more than we do? What could we read that might open us up so that we can understand where we are, what we need to know, and we can get our needs met? Okay? Just a thought. Thank you for joining me for this prayerful pause with the pastor as we consider bell-shaped curves and our spirituality. I'm Pastor Deb Swift of South Presbyterian Church, and this is a Friday in real time, so I'll see you again on Monday. If you are in a position, excuse me, if you're in a position to support this ministry with your prayers and or your finances, we welcome your gifts. You can learn how to contact us at the end of this video. And until next time, whenever that might be, could be right after this if you're binge watching, whenever it is, I hope that you take care. God bless, and bye for now.